Security humiliated. The black CEO mid-flight by morning, she pulled $4. 9B. From the sky. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. You don't belong here. The words cut through the cabin air like a cracked blade of glass. Every head in first class turned. The hum of the engines faded beneath the weight of that sentence, sharp, public, and poisonous. Amina Cole looked up slowly. She'd been reading in silence, the kind of stillness that unsettles people who mistake quiet for weakness. Her seat, too, A. First class, gleamed under the soft cabin lights. Around her, silk scarves, champagne flutes, and entitlement shimmered in perfect order until that voice split it apart. The flight attendant stood stiff beside two uniformed security officers. Behind them, a woman in a navy blazer airline supervisor folded her arms, lips pressed into something that resembled authority but smelled like arrogance. "Ma'am," the supervisor said, her tone rehearsed. "This section is reserved for premium passengers only. I'll need to see your ticket again." Amina didn't move. She met the woman's eyes, steady, unblinking. "You've seen it twice. Then you'll understand why we need to confirm." One of the officers stepped forward. "Let's not make this harder than it has to be." And they'd not watch at all. Gasps fluttered across the cabin like startled birds. Phones lifted. Screens glowed. Everyone suddenly became a journalist. Amina closed her book. "Harder for whom?" The supervisor forced a smile. "Please, ma'am. Let's do this quietly." Quietly. That word always meant without witnesses. Passengers whispered. "She must have sneaked up here. Maybe a mistake in the booking." "No, look at her. She doesn't look first class." Amina's fingers brushed the silver clasp of her handbag, the only movement she allowed herself. Her face stayed calm, composed, but her pulse drummed against time itself. The officer reached for her arm. "Ma'am, don't," she said softly. Not loud, not angry, soft enough to make him freeze. The supervisor's smile thinned. "Remove her from the cabin." A hush fell so deep it felt like pressure. The metallic click of the seatbelt sign overhead echoed like a verdict. As the officers took her by each arm, Amina rose. The aisle felt narrower, the air heavier. Passengers leaned away as if dignity were contagious. One man recorded, whispering, "Unbelievable." The supervisor straightened her jacket. "Next time, check your section before boarding." Amina tilted her head. "Next time, check who you're humiliating." The officer's hand brushed her wrist too rough, too sure, and the cabin seemed to tilt. The soft luxury around them curdled into spectacle. Time slowed. The sound of her phone unlocking cracked the silence like a small explosion. One thumb press. A single message draft, glowing on the screen. "Confirm withdrawal." The supervisor scoffed. "Miss, that won't change where you sit." Amina looked at her calm, unshaken. "You're right. It'll change where you stand." For a fraction of a second, no one breathed. The engines roared back like applause waiting for its cue. Security led her down the aisle, past the stairs, past the cameras, toward the open cabin door. She didn't look back. Outside, in the fluorescent corridor of Gate B7, the world felt colder, all glass, metal, and judgment. The officers flanked her. The supervisor followed. Amina's phone vibrated once. A message blinked across the screen. "Confirmed." She exhaled, slow and steady. Somewhere above them, a plane rolled down the runway, unaware that by morning, the sky itself would answer for what happened here. The airport corridor swallowed sound. Everything felt too bright, too sterile, as if even the air was embarrassed by what it had witnessed. Security led her toward the gate seating area, polished tile floors, reflecting a woman who refused to shrink. Amina didn't speak. She didn't fight. She simply adjusted her sleeve where the officer's hand had gripped too tightly, a tiny gesture that somehow reclaimed gravity itself. The supervisor trailed behind, clipboard in hand, whispering into her radio. "Passenger removed from aircraft. Possible ticket issue. Possible." The word floated like perfume masking guilt. Travelers turned their heads as the group passed curiosity mixed with judgment. A man whispered, Must have been a disturbance, another replied. They don't pull people for nothing. The security officer on her left tried to make conversation. We just follow protocol, ma'am. Amina's eyes flicked toward him calm, razor sharp. Protocol's just fear written down. He looked away. They reached the corner near gate B7, where the sign above still glowed first-class boarding. The irony shimmered like glass. The officers released her arms. You can wait here while we verify with management. She nodded once. I'll wait, but she didn't sit. Instead, she stepped toward the window, the long pane of glass overlooking the tarmac. Outside, dawn was breaking in streaks of gold and silver. A plane lifted into the sky, engines thundering like a declaration. She watched it rise, her reflection merging with the clouds. That's when the atmosphere shifted. Something in the air thickened, that invisible change audiences feel in movies, right before the villain realizes they've picked the wrong target. The supervisor's radio crackled. She frowned, trying to look composed. They're checking your reservation again, she said, as if offering mercy. Amina turned slowly. They'll find what they're looking for. She reached for her phone again. No hurry, no drama, just precision. Her thumb hovered over the last thread of a conversation labeled AU Aurelia Holdings Finance. One message sat unsent. Ground all pending agreements with BlueJet Airways. Confirm authority, COL01. She didn't hit send. Not yet. Timing, after all, was currency. The supervisor folded her arms tighter. For future reference, maybe stick to your assigned cabin. Amina smiled a calm, dangerous crescent. For future reference, maybe stick to facts. Her phone vibrated an incoming text from Elena, Chief Financial Officer. Understood. Awaiting final confirmation. Market will open in 32 minutes. The clock on the terminal wall read 6:28 a.m. Amina looked up. Over the intercom, a new voice broke the static. Ladies and gentlemen, BlueJet Airways Flight 472 to Los Angeles is now boarding Group A, the same plane she'd been removed from. Passengers began to rise. Some recognized her, the woman they'd just seen escorted out, and looked away quickly, afraid of guilt by proximity. Others raised their phones again, recording discreetly. Amina's reflection in the window met theirs. She whispered, almost to herself, let them document the moment arrogance met consequence. The supervisor rolled her eyes. What was that? Nothing, Amina said. Just watching history taxi down the runway. She pressed send. Her phone screen blinked once, message delivered. Outside, the plane began its slow crawl toward the runway. The engines roared, indifferent to what had just shifted in the digital ether. Inside, the air changed again, colder now, as if the building itself sensed a financial storm gathering miles above. Amina turned away from the window. You can stop verifying, she said quietly. By the time you finish, the truth will already have landed. This had an art of, in a level eye sign. The supervisor hesitated. Excuse me? Amina walked past her, heels clicking like metronomes of inevitability. You'll understand by morning. Freeze frame. The shot locks on her face serene, unbothered, powerful. The camera tilts up toward the ceiling lights that mimic stars. Voiceover. When dignity is dragged through aisles, justice doesn't scream, it ascends. Cut to black. Long before Amina Cole became a ghost in the machines of modern finance, she was a girl sitting on a broken bus seat, tracing the cracks in the window and dreaming about clouds. Her grandmother used to tell her, they can take your seat, but never your direction. That sentence had built an empire. By 42, Amina had turned a single consulting startup into Aurelia Holdings, a private investment group valued at $62 billion, with assets stretching from tech to transportation and a controlling stake in BlueJet Airways, the very airline that had just dragged her off its plane. Her genius was silence. While others bragged about acquisitions, she moved like a shadow in sunlight, unseen but shaping everything it touched. CEOs courted her. Senators quoted her. Journalists speculated about her face because she rarely allowed photos. To the public, Amina Cole was just a name printed at the bottom of annual reports, the kind of myth whispered about in rooms filled with people who thought they ran the world. But the world, as it turned out, reported to her portfolio. Her schedule that morning had been simple. A quiet flight from New York to Los Angeles to finalize the Aurelia BlueJet strategic renewal. A. $4. 9B partnership that would refinance the airline's aging fleet and secure 20,000 jobs. The deal was set to be announced at sunrise until arrogance decided to test her patience at 35,000 feet. The irony was perfect. They hadn't just humiliated a woman. They had humiliated their largest investor. Inside the terminal, she sat now in the corner seat by the window. Her posture relaxed, but her mind already running numbers, names, consequences. She wasn't angry. She was calculating. Every humiliation she'd ever endured existed somewhere in her memory, like archived files. The first job interview where the recruiter told her she spoke too confidently for someone from South Memphis. The investor, who assumed she was the intern. The conference where her name badge was accidentally printed without her title. Each one was a matchstick. This morning, the flame finally met oxygen. Across from her, the reflection of airport monitors flickered across her eyes. Breaking news banners scrolled quietly, market futures, aviation indexes, oil prices. Soon, her decision would live there too. Her phone buzzed again. Elena, CFO. Press now? Funds ready. Blue Jet will open at 7 EST. Amina typed. Wait until they board. Then pull everything. She placed the phone face down. In her mind, numbers and faces aligned like constellations, executives who had laughed at her restraint. Reporters who had written reclusive as if privacy were weakness. She remembered every one of them. She thought of her grandmother again. The hands scrubbed raw from cleaning airport floors. The same terminals where her granddaughter now owned entire gates. Amina smiled faintly. Full circle, she whispered. A nearby passenger, a young woman in a flight attendant's uniform, glanced up. Ma'am, are you okay? Amina nodded. Perfectly. The girl hesitated. I saw what they did. I'm so sorry. Amina met her gaze warm, composed. Don't be. They gave the world a live lesson in valuation. The attendant frowned, unsure if it was metaphor or math. Amina continued softly, and soon they'll learn the interest rate on disrespect. The intercom above announced boarding for the next flight, the sound blending with her pulse. Voiceover. Calm. Cinematic. Every empire is one decision away from remembering who built it. The screen on her phone blinked unreadable from afar. Inevitable up close. 7:01 a.m. Somewhere, $4.9 billion began to move. Cut to the sky outside a Blue Jet plane slicing through the morning light. Unaware that gravity had just acquired a new accountant. Fade to white. At 7:05 a.m., the world still thought Amina Cole was just another inconvenienced passenger waiting for a refund. But in the control tower of power, time was already shifting its allegiance. The supervisor from earlier paced near the boarding counter, speaking in clipped whispers to someone over her headset. Her face was tight, professional, the expression people wear when they're terrified of being wrong but too proud to admit it. Corporate confirms she's not on the manifest, she said, glancing nervously toward Amina. No record of an executive ticket under that name. Amina didn't bother correcting her. She simply watched the board flicker. Blue Jet, 472. Departed. The plane was gone. So was her patience. She rose from her seat, collecting only her phone. The officer who'd escorted her earlier looked uneasy, as if realizing too late that some rules are written by the wrong people. Ma'am, are you waiting for someone to pick you up? He asked. Amina's gaze didn't move from the window. No. Someone's about to drop. He didn't understand. Few ever did. The terminal's morning rhythm carried on announcements, coffee orders, rolling suitcases. But beneath that hum was another frequency, the quiet click of an empire repositioning its assets. At Aurelia Holdings, a private server pinged 3 times. An encrypted document opened under her authorization code, Cole 01, Emergency Divestiture Protocol. 3 options blinked in sequence. 1. Suspend capital line. 2. Freeze credit partnership. 3. Withdraw equity stake. Her thumb hovered over the third. Elena, she said into her AirPods, voice low but cutting through static. Initiate withdrawal sequence. Confirm liquidity movement across all divisions, aviation first. The CFO's voice came back, crisp and steady. Yes, ma'am. Are we publicizing rationale or remaining silent? Amina's reflection in the glass smiled faintly. Silence. Always. It echoes louder. Across the terminal, the supervisor noticed her talking and frowned. Excuse me, ma'am, she called, approaching. You can't make calls in the restricted. Amina turned, slow as a sunrise. You've restricted enough today. The woman blinked, confused. Excuse me? By noon, Amina said softly. You'll know exactly who you removed. The supervisor scoffed the brittle confidence of someone who hadn't yet seen her own obituary drafted in stock reports. I doubt that, ma'am. We follow corporate procedures. Amina's eyes were steady. So do I. Her phone vibrated. Elena. Funds in motion. $4. 9B cleared. Blue Jet account frozen across 3 exchanges. Trading suspended in pre-market. Amina typed back one word. Confirmed. The moment she hit send, the lights above flickered not because of her, but as if the airport itself sensed a recalibration of balance. Within seconds on monitors across the concourse, the Bloomberg ticker scrolled a single headline. Breaking. Aurelia Holdings withdraws $4. A. 9B investment from Blue Jet Airways. The supervisor froze. Passengers gasped. Someone muttered, Isn't that the same airline? Amina slipped her phone into her coat pocket. Now you're caught up, she said quietly. The officer looked at her with dawning realization. Ma'am, are you? But she was already walking away. The camera follows her through the terminal, a slow tracking shot. Behind her, the chatter grows louder, panic blooming through polished glass and designer heels. Voiceover. They measured her by her seat number. She measured them by their silence. And both calculations came due. Outside, the Blue Jet logo on the tail of a departing plane glints in the sunlight, bright, fragile, unaware. Amina pauses at the automatic doors. The morning wind catches her hair, cold and clean. She breathes once, not in relief, but in conclusion. She whispers, Cancel everything. Cut to black. By 7:20 a.m., most of the world was still sipping coffee. Inside the marble halls of Aurelia Holdings, coffee was shaking. Elena, Amina's CFO, stood in the control suite. A panoramic room of glass and code-watching transaction lines vanished like disappearing stars. Phase 1 complete, she said into the headset. Capital line to Blue Jet closed. Fleet refinancing canceled. Maintenance credit frozen. On the wall-size screen, the airline's balance sheet turned from blue to red, then to blank. Silence followed, not hesitation, but reverence. Far away, in Blue Jet's headquarters, chaos had just begun. Phones screamed. Traders shouted. The CEO, Richard Keene, stumbled into the conference room, tie half-tied, face pale. What do you mean $4.9 billion just disappeared? He barked. His assistant held up a tablet, trembling. Aurelia Holdings pulled out, sir. The authorization code, it's signed by A. Cole. Keene froze. Cole? As in Amina Cole? Yes, sir, the board's already calling. He blinked hard. The pieces falling too late. Oh, God. Back at the airport, Amina walked through the terminal cafe, slow, deliberate, as if nothing in the world had changed. But everything had. On every news screen, the headline multiplied. Aurelia withdraws $4. 9B Blue Jet stocks in freefall. Passengers stared, whispering, That's her. No way. Holy, she's the one. A man in a pilot's uniform, scrolling through his phone, looked up with stunned recognition. Amina met his gaze briefly. Not pride, not revenge, just symmetry. In New York's financial district, markets opened. At 7:31 a.m., Blue Jet's ticker symbol, BJX, halted after a 37% drop in pre-market. Trading desks froze. Banks recalled loans. Insurance partners demanded audits. The empire that had laughed her off a plane now begged the ground to hold still. Elena's voice returned through the earpiece. Phase 2, executed. Secondary investors following our lead. Blue Jet's liquidity window is gone. Should we issue a public statement? Amina stepped outside, the morning sunlight wrapping her like armor. No statement, she said. Just consequences. She crossed the street to the private terminal, where a dark car waited. Her reflection in the window glimmered beside headlines flickering across passing TVs. A mysterious investor collapses Blue Jet overnight. Her phone buzzed again. Message from Board Chair, Aurelia Holdings. Market impact massive. Should we prepare press defense? Amina typed back. No defense required. Dignity is self-explanatory. Inside Blue Jet's headquarters, Richard Keene slammed his hands on the table. Find her, apologize, offer anything. We can't afford this. His legal counsel replied quietly, Sir, we can't reach her. She owns the company that funded us, and she just erased our lifeline. Keen sank into his chair, disbelief written in sweat. The same supervisor from the airport, now watching the newsfeed, covered her mouth in horror as realization spread. She whispered to no one, "That was her. I had her removed." In that moment, the humiliation inverted. The hunter became the headline. Voiceover, low and deliberate. They wanted her out of the cabin. She took them out of the sky. The montage continued. Data screens flipping, press alerts erupting, the airline's website crashing under traffic. Anchors on morning television scrambled for information. Who is Amina Cole? Was this retaliation or regulation? What happens when a woman tired of being underestimated holds the world's checkbook? Cut back to Amina, seated in the back of her car, watching planes streak across the horizon. Her phone buzzed one last time, Elena. Blue Jet shares suspended indefinitely, Amina replied. Let them rest. They've been flying on borrowed respect. Outside, sunlight flooded the runway, gold, merciless, pure. For the first time that morning, Amina smiled. Not at victory, at balance. Voiceover. Revenge is loud. Justice whispers. Cut to black. By 8 a.m., Amina Cole no longer existed, only in boardrooms and whispers. She was everywhere. The first video hit Twitter like a dropped match in dry grass, grainy footage from the airplane aisle, showing security escorting her away while passengers watched. The caption read, "They kicked this black woman out of first class. Turns out she owns the airline's biggest investor." 10 minutes later, it had over 2 million views. By 9, the hashtags had colonized every screen. Number Amina Cole, number Fly with Dignity, number 4.9 billion. The world didn't just watch it, replayed, dissected, reacted. Morning anchors debated the video between ads for the same airline, now in freefall. Was this discrimination? One asked. It looks worse than that, another replied. It looks systemic. Screens filled with frozen images of her calm face, her stillness misread as weakness, now recognized as restraint. The internet did what it always does. It found context. Clips of Amina's few public appearances resurfaced graduation speeches, investment panels, her single interview from years ago where she said, "Real power isn't loud. It doesn't ask permission to sit." That quote became a battle cry. Across the Atlantic, journalists scrambled for statements. Blue Jet Airways' PR team issued a shaky press release. "We deeply regret the misunderstanding involving Miss Amina Cole." It was too late. The world had already written the headline for them. Memes, commentary, podcasts, think pieces, all orbiting around one undeniable truth. They had humiliated the woman who literally financed their wings. At a coffee shop in Chicago, 2 travelers watched the news scroll by. "Wait, that's the same woman we saw at the airport," one said. His friend nodded. "Man." She didn't even raise her voice. At a university lecture hall, a professor paused mid-lesson and turned the screen toward the class. "That," she said, "is how structural bias collapses not with noise, but with evidence." Even Wall Street took notice. Aurelia Holdings' private fund rose 6% by noon. Blue Jet's market value dropped another 43% before regulators suspended trading entirely. Elena called from the office. "We're getting flooded with requests. Interviews, networks, think tanks, they all want your statement." In quote, 7.5 and regrettable to happen ad ever. With flash, be fonda for me. Amina stared out the car window, the city sliding past like a film reel. "No interviews," she said. "They saw the lesson. Let it teach itself." "Should I prepare an internal memo?" Elena asked. "Only this," Amina replied. "Respect costs nothing. Losing it costs billions." That single line, posted hours later from Aurelia's official account, broke the internet again, a sentence framed in black and gold, shared by celebrities, CEOs, even senators. Within minutes, it became the new corporate gospel. The supervisor from the airport, her name now revealed by online sleuths, issued a trembling apology through her lawyer. The airline suspended her indefinitely. No one cheered. They didn't need to. The scale of consequence spoke for itself. In the midst of chaos, Amina sat in her private office overlooking the skyline, not celebrating, just breathing. Her phone buzzed non-stop, but she ignored it. The television behind her replayed the viral footage again. This time, the audio had been slowed. Every frame examined not to expose her humiliation, but to capture the moment she looked into the camera before being led away. Someone online had captioned it, "The look of a woman who knows the world is already hers." She turned off the screen. Silence filled the room again, the kind that feels earned. Voiceover, soft and measured. The internet roared. She never said a word. Because when truth is visible, explanation is unnecessary. The shot widened, the skyline glittering, a plane crawling across the sky. Dawn returned, clear and quiet, 24 hours after the storm. The world that had mocked her now looked upward with reverence. At 7 a.m., a convoy of black cars glided through the private gates of Aurelia Tower, the headquarters of her global empire. Reporters gathered behind security barriers, microphones ready for war, but the mood was oddly hushed. No outrage now, just curiosity. Amina stepped out in a slate gray suit, her hair pulled back, her expression calm. She didn't walk fast. She never did. Time followed her pace. Inside the tower's atrium, the Skyward Foundation launch was already in motion. Rows of seats filled with executives, engineers, students, and journalists. On the stage stood a single podium and a banner in deep navy, reclaiming the sky one opportunity at a time. Elena approached, tablet in hand. "We've confirmed the numbers," she whispered. "Initial endowment, 400 million. Scholarships ready. First initiative targets women of color entering aviation engineering." Amina nodded once. "Good. Make sure it feels earned, not gifted." Elena smiled faintly. "That's exactly how you build everything." The lights dimmed, cameras rolled. A hush swept across the room. When Amina stepped up to the podium, no music played, just her heels against the marble, echoing like punctuation. She began softly, almost conversational. "Yesterday, the world saw what happens when perception collides with position. I didn't plan it. I didn't need to. It revealed itself." She paused, scanning the faces before her, some guilty, some grateful, all listening. "But this," she gestured to the banner behind her, "this is what we do next. Because correction without creation is just revenge. And revenge doesn't rebuild anything worth keeping." Silence thickened, heavy with respect. "So today, every dollar that left arrogance yesterday enters education today. 400 million, committed to teaching those who were told no how to design aircraft that say yes. Because dignity should not need altitude to exist." A murmur of applause began, quiet, reverent. She continued, "This foundation isn't charity. It's correction. We are not fixing the sky, we are owning it." Applause rose higher, but she didn't smile. She simply closed her notes and stepped away from the podium, leaving reporters scrambling for follow-up questions she would never answer. Outside, the morning light washed over the plaza, gilding the Skyward logo newly mounted on the building's facade. Amina stood near the glass doors, watching a group of scholarship recipients gather for their first orientation photo. Young women in navy jackets, each with the same glint in their eyes she'd once carried hunger mixed with belief. One of them, maybe 19, approached timidly. "Miss Cole," she said, voice shaking. "Can I ask you something?" Amina turned, warmth flickering through her composed exterior. "Of course. How did you stay calm when they pulled you off that plane?" Amina studied her for a long moment. "Because I knew they weren't removing me," she said quietly. "They were revealing themselves." The girl's eyes widened, half awe, half understanding. "And what did you do after?" Amina looked toward the horizon, where a jet cut a white line through the blue. "I remembered who built the runway." The girl smiled, nodding as if memorizing scripture. Across town, television networks played her speech on loop. Financial analysts called it the most elegant retaliation in modern history. A former Blue Jet executive, now jobless, appeared on a talk show, voice trembling. "She never raised her voice," he said. "That's what scared us. She didn't need to. It's just in a long, two in that line, an affidellum." The interviewer asked, "Do you regret how it happened?" He looked down. "Every hour of my life." Meanwhile, at the same airport where everything began, a new sign had been installed above the first-class check-in counter. "Courtesy is currency." No logo, no sponsor, just a quiet tribute. Passengers passed beneath it, unaware that the woman who inspired it was flying again that morning. Amina sat by the window of her private jet, no chaos this time. No camera flashes, just sunlight on glass and silence in motion. Elena entered with a folder. "Skyward Foundation, trending #1 worldwide," she said. We've received over 6,000 applications in 6 hours. Amina closed her eyes briefly. Good. Let them dream from altitude. Elena hesitated, then added, and Blue Jet? Amina opened one eye. Grounded for the week. Restructuring. They reached out for a meeting. Is very wishing happen. Elena's brows lifted. Should I schedule it? Amina looked out the window again. Clouds drifted beneath them, like continents of mist. No. Let them climb first. The engines hummed a steady, powerful rhythm. Her phone buzzed, a message from her grandmother's old caretaker, a simple text reading, she'd be proud. Amina smiled softly. She taught me to land gently. She gazed out at the horizon, where the sunlight broke across the wing. Voiceover. Calm, resolute. Power isn't proven in the fall of others, but in the rise of what replaces them. Justice, when it's done right, doesn't burn bridges. It builds runways. The plane climbed higher, disappearing into a sky now filled with names and futures she'd helped lift. Night fell over the city, like velvet, soft, infinite, and earned. From her office at the top of Aurelia Tower, Amina Cole stood by the window, watching the skyline pulse with quiet life. Each light in the distance was a story, a consequence, a course corrected. The storm had ended without a scream. It ended with structure. Below, the streets moved with their usual rhythm: cabs, buses, and people who had no idea that a silent revolution had taken place above their heads. A revolution that hadn't needed riots or headlines, only restraint and one sentence that cost an empire its balance. Amina held a mug of tea between her palms, steam curling like the memory of morning fog. On the wall behind her hung a framed photograph. Her grandmother, smiling in her work uniform, mopping the floors of an airport long before anyone knew the name Aurelia Holdings. The caption below read, "She cleaned the floor I learned to walk on. It is rain from the prize in the Matterway. In a new chalaman anyone be hone. In the raider quettering rounds," Amina whispered to the photo. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" The city outside glowed in reply. Her phone buzzed once a message from Elena. Skyward accepted its first 100 scholars today. You should see their faces. Amina typed back. Send pictures. Moments later, her screen filled with smiling faces. Young women in navy blazers, standing before a hangar embossed with the Skyward Foundation emblem. One held a small model airplane with her name on the wing. Another wore her grandmother's same brand of work shoes. Amina's throat tightened, not with pride, but with memory. The door to her office opened softly. Elena stepped in, carrying 2 glasses of water. You should go home, she said gently. It's been a long few days. Amina smiled. Days like this are the reason the long ones matter. Elena hesitated. They're calling it poetic justice. Amina shook her head. Justice isn't poetry. It's math. What you subtract from dignity, you pay back with interest. Elena smiled faintly, then left her in peace. Outside, clouds rolled past the skyscrapers like slow ships. One of them broke open, revealing a single aircraft crossing under the moon. Blue Jet's logo faded, humbled, glimmered faintly on its tail. Amina watched it climb. She didn't hate them. Not anymore. Hate was noise, and she'd always chosen signal. In that moment, she realized something simple yet profound. The point of power was not possession. It was preservation. To build something unshakable, you had to forgive what trembled. She turned off the lights. The office fell into shadow except for the glow of the city and the reflection of the photo on the wall. Her voice, soft, cinematic, carried through the silence. They measured me by where I sat. They forgot I designed the seat. And it about was as a game. She took one last look at the skyline before walking out, the elevator doors closing behind her with a sigh that sounded like closure. The next morning, headlines were different. No longer scandal, no longer fury, just reflection. The Wall Street Journal, Amina Cole sets new corporate ethics standard. The New York Times, the CEO who turned humiliation into heritage. Bloomberg, $4, 9B deal lost, 4,900, futures gained. The Skyward Foundation became a model for diversity in aviation. Universities began teaching the Cole case in ethics and leadership programs. And somewhere inside a community college classroom in Tennessee, a student raised her hand and asked, "Do you think she forgave them?" The professor smiled. She didn't need to. She corrected them. Later that month, Amina flew again commercial. Deliberately. No entourage, no security, just her in a window seat. The flight attendant approached with a warm smile. "Welcome aboard, Miss Cole. It's an honor." Amina nodded graciously. "Thank you." As the plane ascended, she looked out the window, the world shrinking below, cities turning to constellations. Somewhere beneath those lights, lives had changed because she chose control over chaos. She pressed her hand lightly against the window, feeling the vibration of flight, a heartbeat in motion. Voiceover, calm and certain. Power doesn't shout, it moves, and when it moves, the world rebalances itself. She closed her eyes as the clouds swallowed the plane, sunlight painting everything gold. For a moment, she thought she could hear her grandmother's voice again, soft, proud, steady. "They can take your seat, but never your direction." Amina smiled. "Not anymore. It have so braided." Cut to final montage, the Skyward Foundation hangar, bustling with young engineers testing drones, classrooms filled with women of color, sketching wings on whiteboards, a Blue Jet pilot training new recruits on the updated Dignity protocol. The camera pans up, rising through glass and atmosphere, to a sky bursting with aircraft symbols of ambition finally unchained. Voiceover fades in, final and deliberate. They dragged her off a plane. She lifted the world instead. Because character is a currency, and dignity will always be first class. Fade to white. Music swells a single piano note that lingers, then dissolves into silence. The end.